Welcome to ePathshala. I am Dr. Vishal Jadhav, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology, Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth, Pune. Today we are going to look at a module called World Religions and Western Capitalism, which is part of the paper called Classical Sociological Theory. By now, we have familiarized ourselves with the ideas that Weber believed in, with the philosophy and epistemological roots that he followed, and most importantly, of the question of how capitalism emerged, how he contradicted Marxist theory by overcoming this by developing a theory of comparative world religions. In this module, we will try and understand how Weber begins to understand and comprehend different religious systems across the world, and to try and understand how the normative value structures in these religions allow or disallow for people to maintain or to create material goods in this particular world, or to take leave from this particular material world. So, certain religions provide for access to and they support individuals to act in this material world, whereas some others prefer a more spiritual level of worldly affairs. Weber was concerned about the cause of transformation which was witnessed by the societies in Western Europe after Industrial Revolution of 18th and 19th century. The process of industrialization, urbanization, bureaucratization, secularization resulted in bringing drastic progress of European societies, which was increasingly characterized by the process which Weber addressed as rationalization. In an effort to understand this change, he tried to examine the causal relationship existing between religions and economic systems of many civilizations. The present study, the rise of Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, and world religions and Western capitalism, will be studied from this particular perspective. In the present module, we will try to understand Weber's causal relationship between Protestantism and the development of capitalism. This work is a part of the larger body of his scholarship that stresses the relationship between religions and capitalism throughout the world. He analyzed the degree to which primitive religion has acted as impediments in the development of economic rationality, which for Weber was synonymous to capitalism. In his thesis, Weber tries to explain the relationship between two ideal types, that is, the Protestant thesis and capitalism. He sometimes spoke of correlation and other times of causal influences. He was intentionally treating only one side of the causal chain, that is the impact of religious values on modern economic conduct, which for him was the greatest agent for the development of modern capitalism. Herein, economic conduct refers to the behavior expected from individuals based on the values of punctuality, discipline, dedication, and an urge for investment. Background of the study. Weber's The Protestant ethic was a product of the pivotal period of his intellectual career, shortly after his recovery from a depressive illness that had debilitated him from serious academic work. Prior to his sickness, most of his studies dealt with themes related to economics, history, and jurisprudence. Weber writes in a period when German philosophy has been influenced by idealism and by gradual dominance of Marxian viewpoint. In Britain, J.S. Mill's system of logic and Dilthey's hermeneutic traditions were slowly getting an audience. All this philosophical standpoints closely stresses upon the centrality of history in the study of human conduct, in economic action as in other areas. Thus, for Weber, history became an important focal point to the study of social sciences. Weber in his study approached Marxian understanding of society both as set of doctrines and as a political force promoting practical ends. While acknowledging the contributions of Marx, he held a reserved attitude towards Marxian viewpoint of economic determinism in the development of capitalist stage of production. Both the thinkers, Weber and Marx, had devoted much of their attention on the emergence of modern Western capitalism. For Weber, cultural values embodied in Protestant ethic accelerated the development of modern capitalism. Unlike Weber, Marx's understanding of capitalism was not concerned about the historical circumstances which resulted in the development of capitalism. For Marx, capitalism, like other historical modes of production, is the result of real material conditions. In brief, Marx asserted that economic conditions manifest themselves in society and culture, which Weber deferred in his magnum opus, The Rise of Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Weber's study of capitalism. Weber's magnum opus was based on the study of the causal relationship between Protestantism and its impact on modern capitalism, which developed in Western Europe. Henceforth, his idea on capitalism becomes necessary to understand. Weber did not define capitalism in general, but he had a general view of modern capitalism, which he believed existed at his own time. According to him, capitalism is a relentlessly advancing machine based on the principles of rationalization, division of labor, as well as fixed capital. The rationality of modern Western capitalism, as per Weber, is dependent on the calculation of technical factors like appropriation of all physical means of production as disposable one, that is, resources necessary for production can be bought and sold in the market. At the same time, there should not be any restrictions on the expansion of the market system. Mechanization and other rational forms of technology would dominate the production process. Finally, there should be a free labor market followed by the commercialization of economic life, which permits capital to be more mobile and allow owners of capital to pursue maximum profits in any commercialized areas. This leads to the progress of capital in all areas of economic life and promotes the development of market mechanisms. For Weber, these technical factors results in the development of capitalism in the Western Europe. Max Weber's understanding of the spirit of capitalism was influenced by Benjamin Franklin's necessary hints to these that would be rich. In his book, Weber had quoted Franklin's idea regarding the ideal economic action expected from individuals under capitalist conditions. Thus, an employee under capitalist condition should be punctual, disciplined, as well as hardworking. Henceforth, for Weber, capitalism is based on the principle of profit maximization and accumulation of capital, which should not be used on worldly pleasures but on further accumulation processes. Giddens in this regard has stated that for Weber, a rational capitalist enterprise implies two important things: a disciplined labor force and the regularized investment of capital. The regular reproduction of capital involving its continual investments and reinvestments for the end of economic efficiency is foreign to traditional types of enterprise. It is associated with an outlook of a very specific kind, the continual accumulation of wealth for its own sake, rather than for material rewards that it can serve to bring. Man is dominated by making of money, by acquisition as the ultimate purpose of his life. Economic acquisition is no longer subordinated to man as the means for satisfaction to his material needs. This, according to Weber, is the essence of the spirit of modern capitalism. Weber's understanding of religion. While dealing with Weber's concept of religion, one of the questions which may come into our mind is, why should we study Max Weber on religion? For Weber, religion was not associated with mysticism but has a materialist origin. Weber was not concerned with the essence of religion, but he was especially interested in unveiling the effect of religion or religious behavior in the development of rationalization processes. Weber argued that religion and its value system or normative order shapes the behavior of individual as well as conditions his action. Hence, he believed that there is the need to study the religion of the world and its impact on individual action. It was towards this objective that he undertook a study of world religions including Judaism, Hinduism and Buddhism. Confucianism. Weber also planned but did not complete a full-scale study of Islam. Together these form an integrated series of work entitled The Protestant Ethic in the Spirit of Capitalism, and his later studies The Religion of India and the Religion of China. By world religions, Weber addressed 5 religions or religiously determined systems of life regulation which have known how to gather multitudes of confessors around them. Weber wanted to have a comparative view of the causal linkages between religion and growth of capitalist ideology. In this regard, he had studied the economic ethic of religions. Economic ethic of religion refers to the practical impulses of action which are founded on the psychological and pragmatic context of religion. Weber in his study has assumed that economic forces influences religion and religious system influences individual thought and action. Henceforth, the study of this causal relationship becomes essential for him. Weber develops his study on the basis of an ideal type denominator, that is, asceticism in the context of religious life and economic activity. Asceticism describes a lifestyle characterized by abstinence from worldly pleasures, often for the purpose of pursuing spiritual goals. Weber used the concept of asceticism to point out a way of living in the world based on the systematic self-denial of worldly pleasures for purposes of attaining future reward and achievement. Weber has classified the concept of asceticism into world-rejecting asceticism and inner-worldly asceticism. The first one involves the set of norms which prescribes denial of temptation and worldly affairs, and the later one urges its members to work within the world to find salvation calling. Thus, Weber categorized the world religion into worldly and otherworldly religions. Weber believed that the religion of the Oriental society, that's Hinduism, Buddhism and Confucianism and Taoism, had championed otherworldly asceticism as a path of salvation. Henceforth, economic progress and development did not take place in the dominant way in the Oriental society. Weber's study of world religions. Before going through a detailed study of his work, it should be kept in mind that Weber believed that progress and development in terms of capitalist growth was only witnessed in the West, and in this regard he had a negative viewpoint about the development in the East. His study of various religions can be seen in the following points. On Hinduism. In his study of India, Weber placed great emphasis in the study of Hindu religion and its impact on individuals' action. Weber stressed that Hindu doctrines and belief structures champion the essence of otherworldly asceticism. He stated that caste system, a dominant feature of Indian society, was supported by Hindu doctrines and resulted in acting as a barrier in the path of progress. Weber stated that the doctrine of karma, the process of reincarnation and compensation on the basis of one's deed, celebrated by Hinduism, was inherently otherworldly in nature, since it stressed on the idea that individuals' work as per the individual's caste obligation is rewarded in life after death or in his next birth. Thus, he argued, Hinduism preached otherworldly asceticism, which stressed on disenchantment of the material, which is not given importance as it is regarded to be temporary and illusory. It is the welfare of the Atma or the soul which is imperishable, immortal, and is more often in the worldview of Hinduism. Thus, Weber concluded that with such negative attitude of religion towards materialism will foster negative attitude towards the development of economic activity. Hence, for Weber, capitalism or economic rationalization will not take root in India, since for him this nation is dominated by the spirit of otherworldly asceticisms prescribed by Hindu doctrines and scriptures. On Buddhism, Weber's The Religion of India, Sociology of Hinduism and Buddhism is a detailed study done on religious dogmas of Hinduism and Buddhism. He believed that Buddhism was propagated by strictly pensive and mendicant monks who celebrated the essence of detachment of material pursuits. For him, Buddhism preached the concept of penance and relinquishing all worldly affairs as the path to reach the goal of salvation. Weber, in his own words, had described that any proletarian denunciation of wealth would have been equally alien to the Buddha, for whom the unconditional withdrawal from the world was absolute presupposition for salvation. Buddhism constitutes the most radical antithesis to every type of resentment religiosity. Buddhism clearly arose as the salvation techniques of an intellectual stratum originally recruited almost entirely from the privileged castes, especially the warrior caste, which proudly, aristocratically rejected the illusions of life both here and hereafter. Finally, Weber concluded that this world rejecting asceticism as the sole path to attain salvation prescribed by the Buddhist religion itself act as the detrimental force in the development of vocational man and finally in the development of capitalism. On Judaism, for Weber, Judaism as a religion acted as the founding pillars of religions of Christianity and Islam. Weber says Judaism could have generated the spirit of capitalism. However, certain historical forces prevented this. Judaism for Weber could have participated in the process of industrial capitalism, but in reality they were not successful because of the pariah status. Pariah people means hereditary, close social group without political autonomy. Jewish pariah people is characterized by following interrelated external traits. On the one hand, a table and marriage community with ordinarily magical taboo and ritual sanctions excluding outsiders, and on the other, far distinctively particularized economic activity through political and social disprivilege. Weber stated in his thesis on Judaism that the Jews were the pariahs who, according to him, were guests or visitors, being ritually separated from their surroundings, political economy and culture. Weber here brings a resemblance of this pariah status of the Jews with that of the Hindu caste structure, where according to him both were depressed in their position and wanted to reach salvation by fulfilling religiously assigned duties. Weber stated that Jews, while pursuing the path for ethical salvation, provided importance to the ethic of resentment, which had been nurtured by them because of their underprivileged position. For Weber, because of these peculiarities, Judaism could not help in the progress of industrial capitalism as witnessed by the West. The Jewish community brought forth the development of pariah-style capitalism, wherein their economic activity was limited to money lending. In Judaism, the economic ethic remained strongly traditionalistic in its principle. It was characterized by a naive enjoyment of wealth, which is of course alien to any systematic inner worldly asceticism which would encourage economic rationalization. On Confucianism, the religion of Confucianism is based on the principle of humanism. It believes that human beings are fundamentally good, teachable, improvable, and can reach perfection through personal and communal endeavor, especially self-cultivation and self-creation. Confucian thought focuses on the cultivation of virtue and maintenance of ethics. While doing his research on Confucianism, Weber's central aim was to find out why Oriental China, dominated by Confucian religious beliefs, system failed in the process of developing economic rationalization. Weber argues that this religion suffers from the problem of being world accommodating, and its orders and conventions lack the path, methodical control and rationalization in life. Weber also states that due to its inner worldly asceticism and methodological rationalization of life, Confucianism lacks religiously systematized utilitarianism. Overall, for Weber, Confucianism stressed on harmony, traditionalism, and family obligations, which are quite contrary to the relentless pursuit of profit. Thus, he perceived that Confucianism discouraged professional specialization, which for him was important for the growth of capitalism. On Islam, before dealing with Weber's idea on Islam, it should be kept in mind that Weber died before completing his sociology of religion with the full study of Islam, but his comments and inquiry into Islamic law sufficiently interesting enough to discuss. Weber stated that Islam was a monotheist religion based on ethical prophecy which rejected magic. Allah, the sole almighty of the Islam religion, is regarded to be invincible and omniscient entity, and fulfillment of those commandments was not beyond human power. There was no individual quest for salvation or mysticism in ancient Islam. For Weber, one of the chief characters of Islamic religion is the political nature, which can be understood in Weber's own work. To quote him, the elimination of private feuds in the interest of increasing the group's striking power against external foes, the proscriptions of illegitimate forms of sexual behavior, and the regulation of legitimate sexual relations along strongly patriarchal lines, actually creating sexual privileges only for the wealthy in view of the facility of divorce and maintenance of concubines with female slaves. The prohibition of usury, the prescription of taxes for war, and the injunction to support the poor, equally politically in character, is a distinctive religious obligation in Islam. Its only required dogma, the recognition of Allah as one God and one Muhammad as his prophet. Weber found that another important characteristic of Islam is its distinctively feudal spirit. Islam accepted slavery, serfdom, and polygamy, and as a result of this, subjection of women was upon us. Weber finally concluded that with this form of religious ethic, the economic rationalization was never possible, since it never provided the social leverage which was necessary for the Middle East countries to rise from feudal stagnation. On Protestantism, for Weber, Protestantism propagates this worldly asceticism, which in turn acted as the catalyst in the process of economic activity. According to Weber, there are four principal forms of Protestant religion. They are Pietism, Methodism, the sects growing out of the Baptist movement, and Calvinism. For Weber, Calvinism, in the form that had been dominating, influenced Western Europe. Calvinism, for Weber, both maximizes the moral impulsion deriving from the active commitment to the achievement of salvation and focuses it upon economic activity. One of the most important doctrines of Calvinism is the doctrine of predestination. According to this, man's fate is already predestined and can't be transformed by applying earthly standards. God had divided humanity into two classes of people, those whom he had elected to be saved and those whom he had elected to be damned. The former are those who are blessed by God with grace, salvation, and everlasting life, and the latter ones are those who are condemned and were bestowed with dishonor and damnation. At the same time, Calvinism stressed that it is beyond man's capability to understand God's choice about elected and damned. Thus, for Weber, in contrast to other religions, Calvinism didn't prescribe detachment from worldly affairs as a mode to attain salvation or God's grace, which was already predestined. However, this notion of predestination created a feeling of isolation and didn't allow them hope for external salvation. One of the important consequences of this doctrine was that it created salvation anxiety amongst the Protestants, resulting in the question whether they were one of the elected or the damned, leading to their belief in material world. Weber finally concluded the doctrine of predestination and this worldview of Protestantism were favorable to the rise of capitalism in the West. To conclude then, we have seen how Weber looked at various religions in Asia, for instance, Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism, and based on some of these findings, he suggested that probably the religion in Asia allows for a more spiritual understanding of oneself, and therefore it talks about a system wherein an individual should keep away from the material instances and material things of the world. On the other hand, Weber believes that Protestantism, especially Calvinism, allows for a worldly materialist based kind of an ideology. So it supports an ideology that actually pushes an individual to work harder and to produce more in this material world so as to prove herself or himself as being one of those chosen by God.